Hi there, Phil the Practical Gardener again. I'm filming on this on quite a windy day, so I'm standing on my terrace and I'm hoping that the wind won't interfere with the sound on my mic. As you can see, I'm standing in front of my vertical gardens. I've got 3 of these and I'm actually making a 4th one as we speak. I did produce a tip about growing vertical gardens. I think it was actually the very first one that I made. This particular vertical garden is tillandsias or air plants. So these are just simply mounted on this grid steel, which are just hanging from a screw on the wall. It's very, very simple. When I wanted to have this wall painted, the painters just lifted it off the wall, set it aside, painted and put it back. So I do promote them very strongly. They're just simply clipped on over. If I want to take any off to refurbish them, I can just simply do so. Just watch that tip if you're interested in that. But this particular tip is about pruning, or the timing of the year that you should do your pruning. And in reality, you should think about pruning in all of the seasons. It will spread your workload out, and it will also be more beneficial for your garden and your plants. So I'm going to go through first of all winter, then spring, summer and autumn or fall, as they say in the United States. So without more ado, let's get into it. Winter is the time that you should do the structural pruning on your deciduous trees and shrubs. That is to say, fruit trees such as apples, pears, quinces, also specimen trees if they're deciduous ones, and large shrubs. The reason for this is partly because the leaves have fallen, so you can actually see the structure of the tree. You can work out what you should prune out and then take it out. I remember a Dutch gardener said to me many years ago, you prune with the saw in winter and the secateurs or pruners in summer. And I always felt that is pretty good advice. So in winter, I look at my apple tree and I remove large branches that have carried out their function and it's time to take them out. Also disease, crossing and dead twigs as well. My grapevine can be pruned to work it back to its fruiting spurs over winter, and I'll do further pruning in spring and summer as I will discuss. You can also prune berry fruits such as brambles and raspberries in winter. You can take out the stems that have fruited and simply leave the fresh young ones. It's an ideal time to do that. Also, you can do some of your perennials if they've finished flowering. You might choose to prune off flowered stems on your perennials when they've finished flowering. However, you don't have to. You could do this during the winter if you preferred. Sometimes it's quite nice to leave them for as long as possible. The birds will collect seeds from them, and some of them can actually look quite attractive. Some of the ornamental shrubs that you can prune at this time are roses, hydrangea and lavender, most of which flower later in spring or summer as the shoots develop. That is to say, they flower on new wood. So you can flower now or early spring depending on other factors such as tolerance to frost. In some cases, such as hydrangea, you can actually prune the flowered stems right to ground level. This will stimulate the production of fresh new shoots in spring, and they will flower that upcoming summer. Now we'll move on to spring. In spring, by contrast to what I've said earlier, you would prune shrubs which flower in early spring. That is, they flower on the previous year's wood, which stays dormant over the winter. They come on and they flower in spring. Examples are camellia, viburnum, daphne and rhododendron. So you would wait until they're finished flowering before you prune them. In some cases, for example rhododendron, you can actually remove the spent flowers as you prune, which actually saves you a tidy up and makes the shrub look more attractive. This is actually also a good time to prune evergreen shrubs, particularly those that you grow for their vegetative appearance rather than for their flowers. For instance, many conifers such as thuya or arbor vitae or chamaecyparis or junipers. So you don't really want to prune them in winter, because if you left any bare areas, they would look quite unattractive for several months of the year. If you prune them in spring, you will have a flourish of new growth, and that will hide or disguise or clothe over that unattractive part of the plant almost immediately. I also start doing my spring and summer pruning of my grapevine over spring. After the flowers have been produced and set into fruit, the grapevine produces vigorous new growths, which actually can become quite a tangle if you leave them. So several times over spring and summer I will prune them off right up to the developing bunches of grape. It seems like quite an onerous job, but in reality I can get through it very quickly. My grapevine looks attractive all year round. Whether it's bare in winter, it's got the newly developing foliage, the mature grape bunches in autumn, and then finally the autumn foliage in late autumn. This is also a good time to prune hedges and topiary because they will be growing vigorously, and when you do the trimming of them they will reclothe themselves, as I've described earlier for evergreen shrubs. Next we'll move on to summer pruning. This can be a time when you can also prune plants that have done flowering and can come on for a repeat flowering. Roses are a good example, and also some herbaceous perennial plants such as penstemons. If you trim off the flowered shoots, you will quite likely get a flush of new growth and a second flowering. Also, this can be a good time to do some summer pruning on pip fruit such as apples and pears. Quite often over the spring and early summer they will have produced what we call water shoots or epicormics, that is vigorous upright growths that are growing from the main leaders and the laterals and are really surplus to requirements. They're just going to be a vigorous growing part of the plant that is not actually going to produce flowers or fruit. If you prune them off in summer, particularly late summer, it won't tend to induce a vigorous response from the tree because the tree is actually starting to move towards its dormant season. You can simply do that with the secateurs, taking them out. Finally, we'll move to autumn. If you haven't pruned your herbaceous perennial flowers that are finished flowering, you could do so now, or you could leave it to winter as I've discussed earlier. This is actually a key time to prune stone fruit, such as apricots, peaches, nectarines, plums. So you wait until they've finished fruiting and then you can do the pruning. These plants are prone to attack by a range of bacterial diseases, blast, bacterial spot, and some others. Those diseases are active during the winter. If you prune them in the autumn, they won't tend to be active. You won't be at risk of spreading the disease from one tree to another. Just a reminder that you should always hygienically clean your tools between each tree so you don't transfer any disease that you might have picked up. You can also do a final prune on your topiary and hedges. If they're getting a little bit unruly, you can trim them off in autumn. Hopefully you should get a bit of revegetation, just neatly clothing them ready for the winter. So that's the end of my discussion on the seasonal pruning of the various plants in your garden. I hope you find this of value. Now, I have actually covered a range of different aspects of pruning, such as pruning for form, heading and thinning cuts, which is quite a critical one, by the way. This is the final one of my discussions on different aspects of pruning. I'll be moving on to another topic next. Just a reminder that I do have specific tips about some aspects of pruning of ornamental plants, such as roses, also specimen trees, and a range of fruit trees, such as pip fruit, stone fruit, citrus, grapes. So I suggest that you watch them in particular if you are interested in them. Also a reminder that I have actually got 25 different topic areas. They're reflected in my playlists. So if you're interested in landscape design, or how to manage your weeds or your soil, or how to grow fruit and vegetables, then I suggest that you look at that playlist to see ones of relevance to you. Now, I'm just about halfway through the tips that I'm intending to produce, and this is actually my 100th one. Don't forget to put any comments that you might have about the timing of pruning, and also any questions if you have them for me. And don't forget to like this because it does help me, and also share this with others who you think might be interested. Finally, of course, as always, thank you very much for watching this through to the end.